जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गोपी जन वल्लभ यशोदानंदन व्रज यमुना तीरा यमुना तीरा Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8. Prayers by Queen Kunti and Parikshit saved. Listen from the other one. Thank you. Text 10. Abhidravati
Abhidravati
Mam Isha Sharaha Tapta Ayasaha Vibho Kamam Dahatu Nata Garbha Nipatyatam Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnata Mame Garbho Nipatyatam Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Davatu Mamnata Mame Garbho Nipatyatam Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnata Mame Garbho Nipatyatam
Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnatha Mame Garbho Nipatyatam
Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnatha Mame Garbho Nipatyatam
Abhidravati Mam Isha Sarastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnatha Mame Garbho Nipatyatam
Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnata Mame Garbho Nipatyatam Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnata Mame Garbho Nipatyatam Abhidravati Mamisha Sharastaptaya So Vibho Kamam Dahatu Mamnata Mame Garbho Nipatyatam Abhidravati coming towards Mam Isha O Lord Sharaha the arrow Tapta fiery Ayasaha iron Vibho
One,
O Great One,
Kamam,
Kamam,
desire,
Dahatu,
let it burn, Mam,
May,
of me, Natha, O protector, Ma, not, May, my,
Garbhaha,
embryo,
Nipatyatam,
be aborted.
be aborted.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O my Lord, you are all powerful. A fiery iron arrow is coming towards me fast. My Lord, let it burn me personally if you so desire. But please do not let it burn and abort my embryo. Please do me this favor, my Lord. Purport. This incident took place after the death of Abhimanyu, the husband of Uttara. Abhimanyu's widow, Uttara, should have followed the path of her husband, but because she was pregnant and Maharaj Parikshit, a great devotee of the Lord, was lying in embryo, she was responsible for his protection. The mother of a child has a great responsibility in giving all protection to the child, and therefore Uttara was not ashamed to express this frankly before Lord Krishna. Uttara was the daughter of a great king, the wife of a great hero, the student of a great devotee, and later she was the mother of a good king also. She was fortunate in every respect. Kindly repeat the translation. O my Lord,
O my Lord,
you are all powerful.
you are all powerful.
A fiery iron arrow
A fiery arrow
is coming towards me fast.
is coming towards me fast.
My Lord,
My Lord,
let it burn me personally
let it burn me personally
if you so desire.
if you so desire.
But please,
But please,
do not let it burn
do not let it burn
and abort my embryo.
my embryo.
Please do me this favor.
Please do me this favor,
my Lord.
Om Jnana
Tasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Parshadrageshatarine Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Girim Yat Krupatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patikanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Namo
Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratrishe Namaha पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम् आराध्यो भगवान् ब्रजेशतनयस्तत्त्वामवृन्दावनम् रम्या काचिदुपासना व्रजवधू वर्गेण या कल्पिता श्रीमद्भागवतं प्रमाणमूलं प्रेमाकुमर्तो महान् श्रीचैतन्यमहाप्रभोर्मतमिदं तत्रारत्नापरः हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण
We are in the 8th chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are about to hear the celebrated prayers of Queen Kunti. But before that, there is another episode which is being discussed. In the previous chapter, it was described that Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, had killed the sons of the Pandavas. And now, in this chapter, in the beginning, we hear that even though Ashwatthama had been punished in a befitting way, he still had not given up that passion for vengeance. So he wanted to kill the last remaining descendant of the Pandavas. And that descendant was still unborn. It was within the womb of Uttara, the wife of Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna. So he let loose a fiery weapon. And when Uttara saw this weapon approaching her, in great fear and haste, she approached Lord Krishna for protection. She was also, of course, a great devotee. And in this verse, she prays to Krishna, if you desire, she says, if you so desire, if you desire, let my body be burnt to ashes by this fiery weapon, but please protect my embryo, the child within my womb. So this is the prayer with which she approaches Krishna. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions something about Uttara. Firstly, that she was the husband of Abhimanyu, and that she should have also followed in the footsteps of her husband, just like Madhuri did. But Kunti didn't, because she had children. She had to take care of Madhuri's 2 sons and her own 3 sons. So she did not. Similarly, Uttara was pregnant at that time with a child who would later become the great emperor of the earth and who was also a pure devotee. Therefore, she continued on with her life. and she was responsible for his protection. Therefore, she continued on. Srila Prabhupada mentions here that Uttara was a daughter of a great king, the wife of a great hero, the student of a great devotee, and later she was the mother of a good king also. So who was her father? Her
Virat.
father was King Virat. King Virat ruled the kingdom known as Matsya. And it was here that the Pandavas sought refuge in the last year of their exile. The condition that Duryodhana had placed before the Pandavas was that they should be in exile for 12 years, and in the 13th year they should continue their exile but incognito, which means their identity should be concealed. And if their identity was at any time revealed, then they would have to repeat that exile period, another 12 years. So after keeping their identity open for the first 12 years, now they had the challenge of keeping their identity concealed. And because there were 5 brothers and they were distinctive in their appearance, so this was a problem. Finally, they sought refuge in the kingdom of King Virat. They came separately and they posed as different, various personalities. So Bhima posed as a cook. So he got employment in the kitchen of the palace of King Virat as a cook. And naturally, because Bhima was fond of eating, he was also fond of cooking. And then Sahadev, for example, became the keeper of the cows and bulls in the kingdom of Maharaj Virat. They all had skills other than the skills of just ruling. And some of these skills were just considered normal. Sahadev came to King Virat and said, I would like to take employment as the keeper of your cows and bulls. And Virat wanted to know his CV, his biodata, what is your work experience? What is the level of experience in taking care of the cows? And Sahadev said that, I will show you certain bulls in your herd by drinking the urine of which even a barren woman will conceive. And then King Virat said, okay, you're employed. So anyway, that was the science. Sahadev was indeed well known for that. In any case, one by one, all the 5 Pandavas and Draupadi, etc., they took on some of the other employment. And Arjuna became a dance teacher. So he became the dance teacher of Princess Uttara, who was the daughter of King Virat. So in this way, Arjuna became a teacher. So when Prabhupada says here, it says she was a student of a great devotee, Prabhupada is referring to Arjuna as a dance teacher. Arjuna had gone to the heavenly planets earlier, and he had studied many things. He had received weapons, and he had also studied the way the Apsaras were dancing. So he was quite an expert in the art of dancing as well. So he taught this to Uttara. Wife, she was the daughter of a great king, so Virat. Virat was indeed a very powerful king. And he had the great fortune of serving the great devotees of the Lord, the Pandavas, in their crucial final year. Actually, he did not know the identity of the Pandavas himself for that whole year. It was only afterwards that he understood who these 5 people were. Virat fought on the side of the Pandavas in the battle of Kurukshetra, and he, along with his sons, was killed by the Kaurava army. And therefore his kingdom had no king. So later on, Sahadev became the ruler of the erstwhile kingdom of King Virat. So Uttara was the daughter of a great king, that is Virat. The wife of a great hero, that is Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu was only about 16 years old when he was killed. And he was killed in an unjust way. Many powerful warriors gathered together to kill him. Generally, according to the etiquette and conduct of warfare in the Vedic culture, the warriors fought with equals. They did not fight with those who were inferior to them in strength. Not only that, it would be compatible. Let's say there was a warrior who was inferior in strength to a superior warrior, and 3 inferiors were equal to 1 superior. Then it was okay for the 3 of them to fight 1 superior because they were equally matched. But if both were, let's say, Maharathis, then it would be 1-on-1. Or both were Atirathis, they would be 1-on-1. But if they were subordinate, their strengths had to match up. But in this case, there were many of them who grouped together to fight against Abhimanyu, and that was unjust. They formed a formation called the Chakra Vyuha. And Arjuna had instructed Subhadra about this right at the beginning. But Subhadra had fallen asleep somehow or the other. And he had described how the Chakra Vyuha has to be entered into as a war strategy. But somehow or the other, the aspect of how to come out of it was not told. So then Abhimanyu, I remember because he was still in his mother's womb at that time, he had heard. So even the child in the womb can hear things, can be aware of certain things. So he understood, he learned, but he did not know how to come out. So when the Kauravas made the Chakra Vyuha formation, Abhimanyu, with great bravery and expertise, penetrated into that formation and he caused havoc in the Kaurava army. At that time, all these other great warriors, they all grouped and they fought against him, and he was single-handed fighting with everybody. And he was killed eventually. And Arjuna was, of course, infuriated by that. But even the Kauravas appreciated the heroism of this young lad who fought with such bravery and skill. So she was the husband of a very great warrior and a devotee, Abhimanyu. And she was a mother of a good king also. She was a mother of that personality who would later become known as Parikshit. And the way in which Krishna would protect the child in the womb has been mentioned here in the subsequent verses. So, Uttara, Virat, yes, these are all great personalities. And today, however, I would like to focus on one or two sentences that Srila Prabhupada says here at the purport and the overall mood of this verse. The verse says that Uttara is praying, let me die, but let my child survive. And this is natural also because a mother wants to protect the child. The mother doesn't mind any harm coming to herself, but she doesn't want any harm coming to the child. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport here that Uttara felt herself responsible for his protection. The mother of a child has a great responsibility in giving all protection to the child. And therefore, Uttara was not ashamed to express this frankly before Lord Krishna. So this idea of a mother giving protection to the child is a very important idea. Generally, a mother will do anything for the well-being and protection of the child. But the situation today is, unfortunately, that it is these mothers themselves who are instrumental in killing the children in their womb. This is one of the great tragedies of Kali Yuga. Srila Prabhupada spoke extensively. Hare Krishna, Bhagavad Gita. So this is one of the tragedies of the modern Kali Yuga that Srila Prabhupada spoke extensively about. And great irony that a mother who is supposed to be the biggest protector of the child turns out to be the biggest killer of the child. And generally, mothers are very fond of their children. This is the law of nature. But what is it that causes the mothers to become so heartless and cruel and be willing to actually this idea of just walking out of class, I say this in London all the time. Once you're in the class, you have to just sit. Otherwise, you should be outside, or you should just sit at the door where you can slip out. But just walking out of the class in the middle is actually no offense to the Bhagavatam. Because we are hearing Bhagavatam that is spoken here. So once we are here, there is a certain etiquette. We have to just sit and hear. It's only 1 hour. I mentioned in London here one time also that one sannyasi was joking that the only time he ever gave a class in which nobody walked out was when they had gone on a boat trip. And perhaps in all of Bhagavatam class we should have a motor water exit once a time. Gates are closed. So anyway, this is the tragedy of the modern times. Millions upon millions of innocent children are killed every year within the womb by the person who is supposed to be the greatest protector and lover of the child. There are many fallacious statistics presented in the world to show how the lifespan has gone up because of all the medical advancement and everything. Earlier people would succumb to even ordinary diseases, say like tuberculosis or cholera or something like that, or malaria, and they would die often young. And today, because we have all these medical facilities and medical technology, etc., so people don't die because of these diseases. So this is claimed to be a great benefit of the modern science and technology. While it is true that many people are saved from dying due to diseases like malaria, cholera, etc., but the fact that the overall life expectancy has increased, that is not true at all. Because conveniently, they are omitting from the statistics the calculation of the children in the womb who are killed. So if you take into account that there are some children who are killed, weeks into their existence in the womb, and factor in these millions of children and their age, which is just a few weeks or maybe 1 month or 2 months, then the life expectancy statistically is going to come down drastically. And this myth, this false propaganda will be exposed. But they don't consider that, because they consider only the children who are people who are born. But again, as I said, this is fallacious because it's not that human life begins only after birth. Srila Prabhupada mentioned how, quoting from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 3rd canto, that actually the life begins in the womb from the time of conception. In the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 31st chapter, Kapila Dev says, Karmana Daiva Netrena Jantur Dehopapattaye Striyaha Pravishta Kudaram Unso Reta Kanashraya. Karmana Daiva Netrena. So by the arrangement of providence, Daiva. And that is according to one's karma. Daiva Netrena, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, according to one's karma, the Jantuhu or the Jiva, the soul, obtains a particular body. Deha Upapatyaye. And how does that living entity obtain the body? Striyaha Pravishta Udaram. Udaram means the womb. Pravishta means to enter. Striya means the woman. So the soul enters into the womb of the woman. How does the soul enter? Punso Reta Kanashraya. Because Ashraya means to take shelter. So that Jiva, that Jantuhu, that soul, takes shelter of the Kana, that particle of what? Punsana Reta, the semen of the male. So the soul enters into the sperm of the male and then enters finally into the womb of the lady. So the soul is there right from the beginning. It's not that sometimes at some point in time, maybe 2 months later or 3 months later, etc., then suddenly the fetus comes to life. Actually, in every country, there is a law about abortion. Most countries allow abortion, but after a certain period. And this period varies in different countries. I'm not aware of exactly what the statistics are, but Australia must have some line, I think, maybe so many months, so many weeks. And that period changes from time to time. As medical knowledge changes, they also adjust that period and they keep raising the bar. So if earlier, for example, children below 18 weeks could not be aborted, or only children above 18 weeks could be aborted. What was that? I think in India it is about 24 weeks, they would say earlier. You cannot abort a child till the age, before 24 weeks, yes. Now because of medical technology, they say, it is not 24 weeks, but it is 22 weeks, then 20 weeks, and 18 weeks. Because their logic is that the child can survive outside the womb with medical help. So their logic is the survivability or viability of the fetus outside the womb. But why is that a criterion for deciding whether the child should be killed or not? In any case, even if the child is born prematurely outside the womb, the child is still dependent on some medical technology. And even if the child is born normally at the normal time, the child is still dependent on the mother completely. The fact that the child has some degree of independence because he or she is outside the womb is not an argument to justify the killing of the child. Srila Prabhupada mentioned that there is no point in time when the child in the womb is not living or the child is not human. So the fact that there is such a cut-off period that is indicated in the law in most countries shows that they do not recognize that the child is a human at all points in time. So this again brings about a logical fallacy. How do you say that killing beyond this age is okay and killing below that is not okay? Is it that the child before that is not human or is not living? They may accept that he's living. They'll say, well, he's not human or is he subhuman? What is your logic? This is a very important point. And I'm sure all of us are going to be confronted with such discussions sometime or the other. And as devotees, as preachers, we should know clearly what stand we should take on this. Let's look at it logically, because many people don't like to bring God into the picture in these discussions. So let's keep God out of the picture for the time being. So let's consider it just from the point of view of logic. This whole idea that you can have a cut-off period, So you can ask the people who propose this idea that the children can be killed, ask them, can you kill a child who is just born? What would be the answer? No. Is there anyone who will say yes? No. Nobody will say yes. So it's clear, as soon as a child is born, you can't kill. Can you kill the child 1 minute before birth? What would you say?
No.
No. Why not?
Still living.
Still living? Just living or still a human?
Still a human.
Human. What about 1 minute before that?
Sure.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Can you kill?
No.
No. So the criteria that the child is a human is still valid? Okay. Take another minute before that. Situation changes? No. Another minute before that. Changes? No. Keep going back 1 minute at a time. A point will come suddenly, they'll say, yes, stop. This is the cutoff period. So now they have to explain what happens at that time. Some miraculous thing happens. That now the child is no longer a human. What happens at that moment? What is your scientific explanation, your logical explanation for believing that now it's okay to kill the child? Has the child stopped being a human at that age? Has a child below that age become a subhuman? That's not logical. Living, yes, that's clear, because it's growing, the child. But human or not, that is the question. They cleverly call it tissue. It's a tissue that's growing. So they imply that the tissue is not a human, or it's subhuman. But the point is, only something that is human can grow into a human. Something that is not human cannot become a human. If something is a human, it must have grown from something human. You can't have a subhuman thing growing into something human. So therefore this idea that the human nature of the child at some point cannot be logically validated. It is just completely irrational and illogical. The only logical explanation is that life begins at the time of conception, and because it is a human male and a human female coming together, so the child must also be a human from the very point of conception. It cannot be otherwise. Any other stand that is taken would be logically fallacious. Some people wrongly cite the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures. I read an article some time ago where one person was quoting from the Garbhopanishad, Garbha Upanishad, one of the minor Upanishads. And they say that it is said there that life comes there into the child, into the fetus at 7 months. And therefore, Hinduism, they say, because they were talking about Hindu scriptures. So they say, therefore, that the Hindu scriptures agree that life comes only at some time when the child becomes a human. But that is a misreading of the scripture. Actually, the 7-month period indicates when the child will consciousness. It's not that there is no consciousness. If there is no consciousness, how can the child grow? The child is growing, the consciousness is there. It's just like when we are unconscious during a surgery, we're anesthetized, or we're in deep sleep. We are conscious in the sense that the soul is there, the bodily activities are going on inside, but we are not aware of the external world, that's all. So this 7-month thing is about the child becoming aware externally of itself, not that the child doesn't have consciousness. So the point is that this consciousness now being in the womb enables the body to grow. The body is sustained by the food that is provided by the mother's body. And eventually it comes to a point when it's ready for coming out of the mother's womb. So therefore, killing the child in the Vedic scriptures is called Bhruna Hatya. Bhruna refers to the fetus. And the killer of the child is called Bhruna Gna. Gna means killer, and Bhru refers to the fetus. So it's considered very, very sinful. A grave karmic offense. And in one scripture, one of the Upanishads or somewhere, maybe one of the Vedas, it is said, killing the child in the womb is as good as or as bad as killing your live parents. So there is no question about it that in the Vedic scriptures, the killing of the child in the womb is condemned as being very, very sinful. However, such is the level of discourse today that people even take the Vedic scriptures and try to twist it and present some argument to support their contention that abortion is all right. And they give various other forms of rationalizations, like we have to see that minimum possible violence is committed, etc., etc. But the point is that abortion is tremendous violence. For those of you who may be aware, and it's not actually suitable to talk all this in front of the deities, but the killing in the womb, the techniques of abortion are very gory, very ghastly, something you can't even describe here in the temple. And if only people knew how ghastly the killing is, how cruel it is, they would cringe to the point that they would say, no, now I don't want to do abortion. But such is the nature of modern scientific propaganda that the medical community will only tell the mother and the relatives it's only tissue removal. So they have euphemisms like that. Or it is medical termination of pregnancy. But they don't call it what it really is, which is not just killing, but it's slaughter of the child in the womb. You know, in law, since we've decided we won't talk about God for some time, we'll talk to science, logic, let's talk about law. In law, a court decides punishment according to various criteria. One of the criteria is the brutality of the crime. And the second is the nature or the condition of the victim when he or she was attacked or killed. So the more helpless a victim, the greater the severity of the crime. Let's say, there are two young people who get into a fight and then one kills the other person. Of course it's a murder and the person who's killed them will be punished. But if the victim happened to be, let us say, a wheelchair-bound person who was helpless, couldn't move, then the punishment will be more severe. Moreover, if the crime was more violent and brutal, then the judge would be inclined to give a more severe punishment to the perpetrator of the crime. Now consider the position of a child in the womb. Who can be more helpless than the child in the womb? The child in the womb is completely unable to defend itself. Even a person sitting in a wheelchair can at least scream. He can be heard. Maybe he can move his hands and try to protect himself. But the child in the womb is utterly helpless. And number two, the techniques of abortion, again, are so cruel, so brutal, that this, in normal circumstances in law, would qualify for immediately killing the perpetrator of this crime. So ghastly is this crime, and so bewildering is the fact that people don't just get it. They still don't realize how ghastly this is, and they still try to rationalize it, justify it with so much word jugglery from legal standpoint, from the point of view of the mother's right. In America, it's a big debate that happens even in the presidential elections. Pro-choice and pro-life. Yes? Those who are pro-life, they say that you cannot kill the child in the womb. They're mostly people ascribing to some religious denomination, mostly Christians, who stand up very strongly and take a stand against abortion. And naturally we support that. There are those who say we are pro-choice. Choice meaning that the mother has a choice. And their logic is that it's my body and I can do what I like with it. But the point is, it's not merely your body now. There's another body inside your womb. And that entity also has a right. That person is also a living human being who has a right to exist. In as much as you cannot kill your child after birth because you say, this is my child, similarly you cannot kill the child in the womb, even though the child is inside your womb. Actually, most countries outlaw attempt to commit suicide. Am I right?
Yes.
In Australia, is attempt to commit suicide a crime?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes. Why?
It's actually not.
Sorry?
It's not a crime.
Not a crime.
Many people
Do it.
try it many times and they're not incriminated at all. So.
That is for compassionate reasons, humanitarian reasons. But the law, what does it say?
I'm not sure what the law says.
You see, mostly happy people don't commit suicide. Yeah? So a person who commits suicide is already distraught with grief. So the police and the law enforcing agencies will take a compassionate view and not pursue the case. You know, already the person is troubled. Oh, why send the person to jail? So generally on compassionate grounds, people would say, okay, you know, it's fine. They come to counseling and they do some other things like that. But the point is, you do not even have a right to take your own life. So what to speak of somebody else's life? So you cannot say that because it's my body, I can do whatever I like. No. You cannot even destroy your own body. That's against the law. And the idea that the child is a distinct personality is borne out even by modern medical science. Any doctors here? No doctors, right? Sorry? Okay, you're a doctor?
I'm a GP.
Okay. So, when a lady is carrying a child and she goes to the gynecologist or the obstetrician, is it a fact that the doctor now has two patients?
Absolutely.
Yes, that's what the medical science says. That is what they claim, that they say, they accept this fact, and the doctor says it also. That now I have two patients, the mother and the child within the mother. So now, the doctor is responsible for both patients. They take what is called a Hippocrates oath when they become doctors, but it's now become a hypocritical oath. Not a Hippocrates oath. So then, medical science also recognizes that the child in the womb is a patient. A patient meaning is an entity, is a human being, and therefore is entitled to life. Another interesting angle is, someone pointed out to me, a lawyer in India, if someone wants to bequeath property, you cannot do so to a child who is not conceived. So let's say somebody said, I plan to conceive a child next year, and therefore I'll bequeath my property to that child who is not yet conceived. No, you can't do that. But if the child has already been conceived, but is not born, the child is still in the womb, you can make a will and say, I bequeath my property to my unborn child, because the child has been conceived and the child is in the womb. In other words, the law recognizes the child in the womb to be a legal person. A legal person has rights. In as much as you and I have a right to exist, to live, and that right cannot be taken away from us. it's a crime. Similarly, the child in the womb is a person, is a human that has a fundamental right to life. All modern governments have certain fundamental rights given to citizens, and the right to life is considered one of the most fundamental rights. So this right exists also to the children in the womb. So one British jurist has argued, and actually quite wisely we agree with that the right to be born is also a part of the right to life. The child in the womb has a right to be born, has a right to see the light of day, because the child in the womb is also living. So this is an important point. So even from the legal point of view, from the medical point of view, the scientific point of view, ethical point of view, there is no case. They may say, well, mostly it is because they don't want to bear the child. The child is a burden. The child becomes an interference in the independence or the sense gratification of the parent, and it was an unwanted child, etc., etc. So they kill the child. But this will only create horrible karma. Sometimes there are arguments given favoring abortion that evoke some sympathy in the minds of people who are not very acquainted with good logic. And the argument is that, let's say it was a case of rape, and a particular lady was raped, and she has now become pregnant. And because she was raped, therefore it is all right to abort the child. And that is the logic that many people give. But the point is, even though a very, very abominable crime has taken place, and justice needs to be done, but should we see things only from the point of view of the mother? Is there another entity from whose point of view we should also see things? Should we also see things from the point of view of the child? Granted, it was not the fault of the mother. The mother should be given all sorts of support. Financial support, emotional support, social support, medical support, every form of support. But who was the perpetrator of the crime? The perpetrator of the crime goes scot-free because most modern countries don't have death penalty now. Many don't. So the rapist will go free, but who's killed? The child in the womb. What an irony. Yes? What was the fault of the child? So you ended up banning the death penalty for the rapist, but you're giving the death penalty to the child. Just see the ridiculous nature of the modern day logic. What is the fault of the poor child? Now, I'm not talking from the point of view of karma. So I'll come to that about what Srila Prabhupada says about this. But modern people don't accept karma, etc. And in any case, even if it's karma, it doesn't give me the right to kill somebody and say it's your karma. Correct? So therefore, when the child is in the womb, it has every right to exist, to survive. We cannot simply have some reason because of inconvenience to the mother or to the parents or to the society at large. Rape is not the child's problem. Rape is a problem of the society. It's because society is problematic, therefore you have these. So because society has a problem, how does it justify you kill an innocent unborn child? Similarly, for any other reason, let's say the parents are very poor, or maybe let's say the child is deformed. Nowadays with technology you can find out if the child has some defect, like, there could be Down syndrome or some other genetic defect. And then they advise the parents to abort the child because it will be very difficult to look after this child after he or she emerges from the womb. And many parents do it. But the point is, would you kill your child if this defect was discovered after birth? What would you say? No. Then how can we do that when the child is in the womb? As I argued earlier, go back 1 minute at a time, this logic doesn't hold. So the principle is what you can't do outside the womb, you can't do inside the womb. Because it's one child, it's the same child, the same human being, only in different degrees of physiological development. The body changes physiologically from beginning to end. When we are born, our body is so small and undeveloped. When we die in old age, just compare this period. How much the body has transformed, how much the physiology of the body has changed in that period of time. So similarly, the physiological changes begin from the time of conception. And Kapiladev explains in the third canto also how the fetus grows and grows and the limbs develop, etc., etc. Many years ago, there was a movie that was made called The Silent Scream. Any of you have heard of it? The Silent Scream. And this showed through sonography how, sonography is not such technology, how when the instrument that causes the abortion is inserted into the womb of the mother, the child cringes in fear and recoils and tries to avoid that. And it's trying to run away in some way, but it's trapped. It can't run away anywhere. And then the body of the child is destroyed. So anyway, all these different forms of logic, as I said, fallacious, they're bad in law, they're bad in science, they're bad in logic, in ethics, etc. So it is a sublime principle that life is sacred. All life is sacred. But because that's a larger argument, a deeper argument, they consider human life sacred, so alright, at least accept that this child is a human from the very beginning. And today that very person who is supposed to protect the child is killing the child. What greater tragedy can there be? And Srila Prabhupada mentions in one place that people are killing animals, and especially cows, in such a widespread manner that nature will get back. And nature will react and they will also be slaughtered. You make slaughterhouses to kill animals, Prabhupada says, and you will also be killed. But there need not be a slaughterhouse made for you. There are slaughterhouses within your body. And the mothers will kill the child in the womb, Prabhupada said. So this abortion is a kind of a karmic reaction happening because we do large-scale mass killing of animals, including the cow. And the cow is like mother. So because we kill the mother, then the mother kills us. This is what is happening. So it's a vicious action-reaction cycle in which we are all trapped now. So abortion is indeed a great sin. It's one of the most horrible things that you can think about, but conveniently just covered over. It is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to confront. You know this idiom, elephant in the room? Let's say inside the room, you come and say, there's a huge elephant here. You don't notice the elephant in the room, but you notice some small insect in some corner. And you fret about it and fuss about it. You're talking about an insect there, or a huge elephant in the room you don't see. So similarly, they will talk about human rights violations, and which is fine. I mean, I'm all for protection of human rights, etc., etc. But where are these human rights activists when you have millions upon millions of innocent children getting killed every day in the womb? Whenever any terrorist or some criminal is punished, you have all sorts of human rights activists who come up in defense and say, no, no, we have to give them the rights and due process has to be followed, and certainly do that. Follow the due process of law. But what about the due process of law for the unborn child in the womb? So this is a very major issue today. And we have to counter it only on the basis of logic, ethics, and science. You bring in God and they will deviate the whole topic with a diversionary argument. And they will talk about something about religion and this and that. So keep religion aside. Just talk on these principles, on these logical points to people so that they can understand what it is that they are doing. Most people are ignorant and innocent. They don't realize what it is that is happening, what it is that they are doing. So they have to be made aware. And because it is taken so casually and so dismissively by the medical community, it's just tissue removal. So the mother also is somewhat all right with it because she thinks nothing's so wrong, it's just tissue. But she doesn't understand what kind of violence is taking place in the course of that surgery and how it is that the child in the womb is killed. So this is one of the major reasons why we have en masse slaughter of human beings going on within the womb and also outside the womb. So when people become increasingly sinful, it is very difficult for them to be inclined towards spiritual matters. So we go and talk about Krishna consciousness everywhere, and we find many times people just are not inclined. Pashukna, yes? King Parikshit also says that who will not be attracted to Krishna Katha except a killer of animals? If killer of animals can't be attracted to Krishna Katha, how can killer of their own children be attracted to Krishna Katha? So these are important points for us to know and to engage with people in a constructive way for preaching, for making people aware of this, so that at least this sinful activity stops. And we will also get an opportunity through this type of preaching to introduce people to higher principles. Just avoiding sin is not spirituality, but it's a basic platform from which you can try to begin spirituality. So then it gives us an opportunity to take those people further into higher consciousness and say, okay, now let's understand the sanctity of life itself, and then move on and bring them somehow to Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Sorry, it's been quite a ramble, but I thought this was an important topic that we had to cover. Do you have any questions or comments? Yeah, okay. Yes.
Maharaja, thank you for broaching this incredibly important topic in our society. And I guess as a GP, women do approach me a lot, especially young women who seek to terminate their pregnancies. And I find my position, of course, I counsel them as to other options such as adoption and such, but if someone really wants to go ahead with it, I'm actually obliged by law to refer them, like if I have a conscientious objection, I'm obliged by law to refer them to someone who is not a conscientious objector. So either way, in my position, I have no power to kind of change her mind unless I counsel her appropriately and she changes her mind, But I think, I guess, if there are many doctors like me who obviously don't condone abortion, and I think if women face doctors like that more often, there might be some doubt, a seed of doubt planted in their mind because I think ultimately you're right, like they just have a sense that, well, this is normal, it's okay, and it's the right thing to do, and yeah, so I just thought you might be interested as to my position as a GP. And I actually just checked, and actually suicide is no longer criminal offence in New South Wales anyway. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So thank you for those good points, that as a GP, sometimes you're obliged by law to transfer the patient who seeks an abortion to some other doctor. So you're basically saying, I'm sorry, I can't do. Anyway, a GP doesn't perform abortions, right? So if they want an abortion, then they have to go and meet some specialists. You can meet some specialists. Do you have to give any specific names?
No, like they often come because they're distressed, they want advice, and that's why they come to their GP. So the GP is in a position to direct them wherever. And no, generally GPs don't.
Yeah, so it's better if you don't get implicated by even mentioning some name, to go to such and such person. Just keep out of it completely. It's your decision, whatever you want to do. You know, and the other point you made is also good, that the more doctors become aware of this, they can start actually talking to their patients about it. And we need to have mass education about this through the media, through our lectures, discussions, in universities, etc., everywhere, so people become aware of these things. So thank you for raising these points. Yes, Bhagavad Gita.
I'm old enough to have lived in Australia before abortion was legal. And something that's also disappeared out of Australian culture, and I think pretty much in the Western world now, since the introduction of abortion, is orphanages and adoption. When I was a young boy, if a girl became pregnant out of wedlock, she would, generally speaking, she'd leave the district for some time on some pretext that, oh, she's gone for some schooling or whatever. She'd go somewhere else for the duration of the pregnancy. She'd give birth to the child, and then the child would be taken into an orphanage. And then people could adopt those children. That's vanished, along with the introduction and development of this easy process of just kill a child. Orphanages, practically speaking, don't exist anymore. So one practical thing we could do as devotees is establish an orphanage. We want to tell young women, don't have this abortion. But the social pressure and the way the sense gratificatory nature of society has become so crazy now. It's a viable option. Just it's too much trouble. Just get rid of it. But we want to try to educate people on all the principles that you're talking about. But a very practical thing would be to establish a Hare Krishna society orphanage. So we can say to people, okay, don't have a child. We'll educate it. We'll bring it up in the proper consciousness. But it's a very interesting phenomenon in society. That's my point. These things have vanished now. People, they'll go to Cambodia and Vietnam and adopt a child, but abort children all over the country. Another factor in this is the economic factor. There was a survey done in South Australia a few years ago about the labour shortage in the state of people of graduate between 18 and 21 entering the labour force. There's a shortage of people in all kinds of areas. And somebody did some research, and it turned out that the official figures of shortage of labour, pretty much to the number, correlated with the number of abortions that have been done over that time.
Interesting. Do we have another mic? So people who are a positive solution that we can give for this is that we should start orphanages where such children can be looked after. Earlier, before abortion became legal in Australia, girls would go elsewhere and give birth and the children were taken care of in orphanages. But now since abortion became legal, they just simply kill because it's an easy option. So if we have orphanages, then we can look after these children nicely. So that's one option. The second is that the point you were making about how the shortage in the labor workforce exactly correlates to the number of abortions performed. Very interesting correlation. Thank you, Barbara. That's really. Yes, Martin.
I used to work in child protection for a while, in therapy with young people, and one young girl got pregnant, and there were very strict procedures to make sure that nothing happened to that child in the womb. But of course, it was all about money, because somebody's head would roll if she harmed the child, or she didn't eat properly and stop smoking, and all these procedures actually, because somebody had to be responsible for that. So it's interesting that they actually perceive the child as a separate person, as a person. I don't know if they thought like that the child was a person, but it was all because somebody would lose their funding if something happened to that baby. But still.
There was that idea that the child has to be looked after. Yes?
Yeah, they had to protect the child, not
any
for
cost.
noble reasons, but they,
Yes.
they acknowledged that the child was.
But now it's just so common, the easy alternative, simply abort. And they would be okay with that, I suppose, in the modern times. Nowadays, they don't have such considerations that nowadays it's so freely available, isn't it? It's completely legal, isn't it, here?
Yeah,
Abortion?
up to 18 weeks it's legal, and then beyond 18 weeks, 18 to 28 weeks, it's legal if two doctors agree, and then beyond 28 weeks, it's legal if the doctor sort of agrees that it's going to be a risk to either the mother's mental health, physical health, or the child is deformed in some way or something like that.
Right. Okay.
What are your thoughts on euthanasia?
Oh, euthanasia is another big topic. I don't think that can be discussed in just a few moments. That will be a lot of discussion. Yes. Yes.
Just one little comment on another point you made earlier in the class when some people got up and walked out. You mentioned prior to that we're going to be hearing the prayers of Queen Kunti shortly. In one of the lectures on the teachings of Queen Kunti, at one point Srila Prabhupada goes aside from the mic and talks to his secretary and he says, "Where are they going?" And the secretary says, "Oh, they've got beauty worship to do." And he said, "No, they should be here.
Mm.
If you have deity worship, then you don't come to class.
Yes.
And if you don't come to class," and then he goes on to talk about how if you don't have a serious hearing program, then he says this Vigraha will become Galagraha. You'll simply see it as a bird.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, the importance of sitting in the class and not moving out. Nice quote about Prabhupada, yes. Yes, Martha, you were saying something?
Well, it's pretty horrible, but there's a whole industry of people waiting for children to be aborted, and they don't even like to refer to. I saw a video and people were mocking that we even call it a fetus, because they're used for medical research or some of the organs or some of the things that they use to people who want to have designer children. So they take some of the genes or whatever it is from the unborn, as soon as the child's born. So they weren't even referring to the unborn child or as it's being born as a fetus. They were just mocking that. And it's a whole industry where people are waiting and they're negotiating with the staff in hospital. This was in America. They're negotiating with the staff in the hospital, and they even owned, it was filmed, somebody was there and filming it, that people were saying, well, you know, sometimes, you know, we just kind of neglect, so it'll happen quicker. It's just a ghastly demoniac industry for
Yes.
harvesting organs and from
That's another
Cosmetic
big,
industry.
It's too horrible to
time.
talk about, really.
The cosmetic industry promotes
Yeah,
fetal
It's a whole
parts
industry.
to rejuvenate and make you use on them.
Yeah.
yes,
One thing leads to another,
Yeah.
down the slippery slope we go.
this is an advanced civilization.
Gas.
This is our standard of advancement. Actually, we're quite late. I'm sorry I've gone beyond the time. The topic is such we could go on, but I think we have to move on. We have other services to do. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Lok Premanande, Hare Krishna.